Oh boy.
イングランド兵数人を相手に獅子奮陣のご活躍でしたが、背後からの槍にあえなく。
I think Thorfinn knows. Like he can see through it.
食べていたんだ。途中飛び出していって。
The sword.
変だな。さっきまで。だって。
トルフィー、絶対におそばを離れるなよ。
あ、冗談じゃねえ。やだね俺は。待ておいてめえ。
殿下の親はお前の仕事だろう。
腰抜かしてやんの。大丈夫か、あのヘタレ王子。恨めったかもだぜ、アシュラッド。ラグナルを殺したのはまずかったんじゃねえか。
でけえ声で話すな。手下どものほとんどは事情を知らん。
あんたラグナルとは反りが合わなかったからな。いくらヘタレでも気づくんじゃねえの。
証拠がなければいいのよ。適当なところで消えてもらわにゃ俺が困る。
ヘタレで結構じゃんか。扱いやすいぜ。王子を足がかりに出世するのにもってこいだ。
Interesting.
お前が今日まで俺についてきたのはなんでだ。
はあ？俺がついていきたかったからだよ。
俺もさ、俺も俺の主を選ぶ。俺の主は、俺がついていきたくなるような男であるべきだ。なんてな。博打だよ、ビョルン。うまくすりゃ、あの王子様は生まれ変わるかもしれん。
あのままへこんじまって立ち直らんかもしれねえぜ。
そん時は見捨てるさ。俺の主の資格はねえ。
殺すがいい。主はすべてを見ておられる。
Oh, love the lighting here.
悪行の数々を。
まだ元気じゃん。
ふさわしい最後が待っているぞ。
Oh boy.
隊
Wow.
長さん、あんた爪伸びてんな。
ここは俺たちの土地だって
ああ、そう僕たちけだものですか。無知なお前たちに一つ歴史を教えてやろう。この土地はもともとはお前らのものじゃないんだ。
How about that?
最初の住人はケルト人だ。森に暮らし精霊を崇めていた。やがてローマ人がやってきた。彼らは支配者だったが、ケルト人と共にこの地に暮らし、知恵と技術と文化を授けた。ローマ人が去り、最後にお前たちアングル人とサクソン人がやってきた。お前たちはケルト人に何ももたらさなかった。それどころかケルト人を荒れ地へ追い出して、この豊かな平原を独占したんだ。
嘘だ。
嘘じゃねえよ。デーン人が獣だってんなら、お前らアングロサクソンも相当
There's a
獣
beast in everyone.
お前たちは暴力でこの地を奪った。俺たちデーン人はお前ら以上の暴力でこの地を奪う。
黙れ。
First an ear, now an eye.
誰が信じるか。
人の話を聞かない子は先生嫌いだな。
真夜中だぜ。
イングランド人が野衆とは恐れ入ったぜ。
Trying to get a jump on them?
来たが。もう遅いぞ。貴様らは死ね。
Oh, don't do that, man.
デン人同士で共食いし合うがいい。
デン人
教えてやる。来るのはトルケルだ。相手に不足がなかろう。
おい、トルケルって言ったか。
Oh, here's the panic.
さあ、言ったような気も。
Panic in the ranks.
トルケル？トルケルだって。
嘘。
Oh, it's spreading, it's spreading.
トルケルが来るぞ。
There he is.
あ
Wow.
の村か。見たいっすね。バーリとインゴルブの隊は左、ホットルは右だ。
Oh boy.
俺は真ん中ね。
Of course.
基本的には皆殺し。王子は殺すなよ。 あとナイフ使いのチビがいるはずだ。そいつも殺すな。
Woo!
遊び相手だ。
この離せゲロめ、僕の命令に逆らうのか。ラグナルをこんなところに置いていけるか。ならば葬儀をせよ。戦士の死に敬意を払え。命令だ。
時間的余裕もござい
There's
ま
no
す。
time for that.
嫌だ、僕は行かないぞ。ラグナル、ラグナル。
Oh. Some of that tough love, right?
ラグナルは死んだ。もう呼んでも来ねえ。
貴様。
ラグナルの言う通りだ。あんた今月がない。俺たちだけじゃねえ。みん
Yeah.
な内心やべえと思ってんだ。今回ばかりはいけねえ。
Is he gonna tell him to go?
勝手に行けよ。いいかお前ら。自分のつきたい修行にして。去る者は去れ。俺は咎めねえ。俺と共に来るやつは歩け。トルケルを振り切るまで歩ける。食べながら歩き、眠りながら歩け。いいか野郎ども。
He'll catch up sooner or later, man. Oh, that's gotta be Thorkel. Yep.
待ってくれトルケル。俺たちはアシュラットとは違う。
Oh, he's not gonna have him anyways. Oh.
狩猟の名はアシュラッドか。
Oh, he didn't even know his name. Okay.
逃げてきたやつがいるってことはだ。
Hmm.
連中だいぶ動揺してるってことだな。
ああ、かわいそう。
かわいい。
やればいいのに。
いいんだよ。こいつらクズだ。
Yeah, if anyone can jump ship.
降参するような臆病者はいらねえ。気合い入れろ。
Oh, he's in the mood, all right. He was so nonchalant. He's just like walking by and just like slicing them up.
プログリム、アトリー、来い。
Ah, I got names.
この橋を壊す。お前らが指揮を取れ。急げよ。
The priest.
酒ありませんか。
あってもおめえがやらねえよ。俺らだって満足に飲めてねえんだぜ。
Maybe go talk to him. Yeah.
ご自慢の知略もネタ切れか。アシェラットの旦那よ。
Hmm.
ビョルン、トロフィー。ビョルン、王子をこっちの二頭立てに移せ。御者はお前だ。トロフィンは王子と一緒に乗って待機してろ。
は？何を？
There could be a possibility of the men turning, right?
おい。アシュラッド。マジか。
大物か小物か利口かバカか。忠義者の中に裏切り者が混じってるのもわかるのさ。
あ？王子を奪うって何じゃ。
There, yeah. He picked it up instantly.
この兵団はもうおしまいだ。他の奴らも半数以上がこっち側だ。残りの半数ともすぐに話がつく。
裏切るのか。アシェラット。
裏切るって言い方は人聞き悪いぜ。あと
You don't say.
あいつはいい狩猟だ。よくやってるよ。
His luck's run out.
だから狩猟として
That's what they
責任を
keep
取って
thinking,
もら
right?
うんで立て続けに読みを外してる。
Hmm.
月が落ちてんだよ。巻いたはずのトルケルにも見っこっちまったじゃねえか。中をすんなよ。
Could there be a split?
あいつは確かにいい狩猟だ。アシェラッドは博打を打って負けたんだ。ただそれだけさ。
Oh shit. Okay. Now they're really gonna panic.
落ち着け野郎ども。
またかよ。行軍って他に言葉を知らねえのか。あんたはよ。
Oh. Oh, he looks kind of strange here. The character's off model.
その一日を生き延びられる保証はねえ。
あ、そう。ならここでお別れだ。俺は急ぐので失礼するよ。
Oh boy. Not gonna be that easy, yeah. That's a priest. He's gonna have a fun time. Okay, episode 16. I mean, that was quite the cliffhanger. Really was quite the cliffhanger. You know, Askeladd finds himself kind of cornered at this point. I mean, I'm not even sure if... I mean, yeah, they are going to make it out of it. You know, Prince Canute is there. So yes, they are going to make it out of there. But, wow, they're really up against it, man. I mean, of course, the men have turned against him. There's a mutiny. And, you know, in that sense, it's realistic. It is realistic that these men, after having been through the last few days and having seen some of his actions play out, some of Askeladd's miscalculations playing out, you could see that, you know, this is realistic. It is realistic. They are looking out for themselves. They are, in their mind, they're essentially jumping a sinking ship, right? And also, you know, beyond that, they have Thorkell on their tails. That certainly expedites the process a bit, doesn't it? I mean, you see just how much fear, just the name of Thorkell kind of strikes in the hearts of these men. You know, there's that moment as the English captain who's being tortured in a brutal fashion. I mean, you know, some of the more amateur guys are just kind of, you know, hitting him as hard as they can. It's not doing much, but Askeladd, of course, doesn't need to exert much force to really, you know, get in there. Though, of course, he didn't slip up even then. But it's quite the scene, isn't it? On one end, it's kind of like a history lesson. On another end, he's just so nonchalant about torturing this guy, right? I'll get into that in a bit. But going back to Thorkell and just the notion of his name striking fear in the hearts of these men, yeah, you see that it spreads like a fire, right? A forest fire, essentially. One guy panics, and then, you know, he kind of tells the other guy, and then everyone panics, right? So, yeah, Thorkell. And the thing is, you really can't blame them for being just scared shitless of this man. Wow, Thorkell is something else. You know, there's, you know, I talk about the realism of this anime quite a bit, but, you know, I guess the one thing that this anime has is Thorkell's over-the-top kills, right? I mean, you know, I enjoy them, of course. I certainly do enjoy a bit of that. And, you know, there's just a bit of that. Him just chopping up these men, and, you know, he's not even breaking a sweat. He's actually quite bored going through these men, kind of like a lawnmower, right? Taking them out. In that sense, you know, he's a man of principle. He's not going to take them on, right? He's not going to take on disloyal men. I mean, in that sense, Thorkell's stance is pretty clear-cut. Right, so even the men that have Askeladd and a handful of the others surrounded now, you know, even if they think they could join up, no, that's not going to happen. But yeah, you know, it was becoming clear in the last episode that, okay, now there's a bit of panic, there's a bit of unrest in the camp. And yeah, you know, one of those brothers, he was the one who was kind of really pushing that idea now that, okay, his luck's running out. And then right in the next episode here, it's kind of reached the boiling point, and he's decided, no, this is the end of the line. And I like that he still maintains that, yes, you know, he's been a good leader up until this point, but there is, you know, this notion of kind of looking out for yourself as well, right? You know, if he perceives it as a sinking ship, you know, his inclination is to jump ship, right? Cut the ties. I mean, in that sense, you know, it's not like he's wrong or anything. Yes, you know, I don't know if they're miscalculations per se, but, you know, he's certainly been unlucky in these last few days, Askeladd, that is. And you see that there is a change in Askeladd as well, right? His approach. I mean, it's quite deliberate. You see that that pragmatic nature is kind of taking a backseat, right? That cunning nature of his is kind of taking a backseat. He's not taking that approach. He's ultimately, like he mentioned himself once again to Bjorn, that it's a gamble. And of course, he hopes that now that Ragnar is eliminated, kind of erased from the situation, that he is going to have an impact on Prince Canute in the time they kind of spent together. And you see, it's certainly a different approach, as expected. He actually struck the prince. And, that might be one of the few times in his life that he's been struck, especially by someone that's not family. It's probably the first time he's been struck by someone that might not be family, because I'm sure he's been struck by family before. But yeah, that is certainly quite the approach, right? And I think in these next few episodes, leading up to the conclusion of this season, perhaps, I think he is going to have an effect on Prince Canute. As sad as it was, I think everyone can agree that the loss of Ragnar and the removal of Ragnar are going to play a part here, right? From Prince Canute's angle, yes, it's a major loss. You see that he's kind of shell-shocked. He's in shock and denial, essentially, for a good portion of this episode, right? In that sense, I'm kind of surprised by Thorfinn's reaction. I was expecting something a bit different. I wasn't expecting Thorfinn to be like completely sad about this scenario, but I thought maybe there would have been some sort of reaction, given that he's kind of been in a similar position. He lost his own father, and then here Prince Canute has lost someone that's pretty much as close as a parent, right? And they've had that bit of a bonding moment. I say that loosely, but they've spent some time together. He knows just how much Ragnar meant to Canute. Maybe it is a bit of an unrealistic expectation to have some sort of reaction out of Thorfinn, but I don't know. That's just my stance on it. I just expected some type of reaction in that moment. He's still kind of tough to read. And in that sense, by the end of it, you see that it's such a unique situation that Askeladd finds himself kind of trusting in Thorfinn, right? Of course, alongside Bjorn as well, who is, his loyalty is undisputed. You cannot question Bjorn's loyalty to Askeladd. And, there's that fantastic scene in the beginning as well, the conversation. I felt like that was a much needed conversation after these past few episodes, because I wasn't getting much out of Bjorn. I was getting a lot of these moments, facial expressions. Again, that's a big thing in this anime, in this story. So I could read into that quite a bit, that, he has concern. He has concern about Askeladd and his, motives, perhaps, or, the choices he's making for the men. And the men includes Bjorn, of course. So, he's thinking about himself as well. But to me, it's so clear that his loyalty is still intact. Perhaps to a fault. It could be to a fault, given how this episode ended. This is kind of perfect for Thorkel, right? Now, his own men stopped him from escaping, and he knows there's, panic, unrest, the group is unsettled, and he sees that they've turned on him. Though, of course, he doesn't want Thorfinn harmed. Yes, they're not going to harm the prince, because their plan, that one of the brothers' plan was to take the prince, hand him over to Thorkel, right? But as of this point, Thorfinn is in danger. I'm sure he could cut up many of them. And I'm sure, that team of Askeladd, Bjorn, and Thorfinn can put up a fight. But again, for how long, right? For how long? They're surrounded. But in that sense, that certainly sets up quite an action-packed episode, right? But yeah, in that sense, it is possible that maybe Thorkel might step in, right? If he thinks that Thorfinn's in danger. Because he made it clear, if you come across a smaller dude that's got the blades, do not approach him or do not kill him. That one's mine, right? So yeah, I think he might step in if he thinks Thorfinn might need some help. I think it's possible, but in that sense, that also kind of sets up a potential duel, right? A rematch of sorts if Thorkel does come across Thorfinn. He has come across Thorfinn, but if he does kind of, go in there to kind of make sure he doesn't die, kind of goes through these men himself maybe. So yeah, there is a possibility that, one of the brothers or both of the brothers could die. And, beside Bjorn, those two, the brothers, are the prominently featured members of Askeladd's group, or former members at this point. I really liked that one brother not really being on board, right? It feels like he reluctantly kind of goes along because, it is his brother, and they've set up that, they always have each other's back. But yeah, I loved how it was kind of like a back and forth. And I like the fact that, the one brother, again, I got names for them, but it was kind of like, I haven't heard it enough to actually register, but I did get names for them. But, the one brother who wanted to turn on Askeladd, he was still real about it, right? He still had respect for Askeladd and the job he's done so far. But, he also felt that, for those same reasons, he has to be judged as a leader at this moment in time. So, yeah. And of course, that brings us to the cliffhanger. Now, I really hope I'm not about to see a major death here, right? And there's only one that could even potentially happen at this point, because Prince Canute is not going to die. Thorfinn cannot die. I don't think Askeladd can die, not just yet, at least. And I say that because I'm pretty sure by the end of this season, by the end of this story, Askeladd is probably going to die. I feel like the trajectory of the story is certainly quite clear at this point. They established really early on that, of course, it's Thorfinn's story, right? Then he kind of took a backseat, and Askeladd kind of comes into the spotlight, and it became his story for now, at least, right? And I've been going through that story. It's been fantastic so far. But I do feel like at some point, the focus is going to shift back to Thorfinn and Thorfinn only, right? Or he's going to be the major focus. And I feel like for that to happen, at some point, Askeladd is going to die and the focus is going to move on. But before any of that could potentially happen, I'm potentially scared for Bjorn, right? If there's to be a major death anytime soon, I think Bjorn is first in line in that sense, right? Given the things I just mentioned. So I do hope he also gets to make it out of there, right? The loyal Bjorn. And then I guess if they do make it out of there, that could make for a really interesting last stretch of this series or this season, right? It would give you Askeladd, Bjorn, Thorfinn, Prince Canute, the priest, hopefully. Yeah, I hope so. Because I do feel like, the priest certainly has a part to play here still. The story they've kind of hinted at, and, the thematic elements they've kind of hinted at through the priest. And I'm still kind of unsure about the ears guy, Mimi, I believe he keeps calling him in Japanese. I don't know. He is quite useful, and I'm guessing maybe he kind of already overheard the conversation, right, of Askeladd and Bjorn. But as expected, Askeladd picked up on it that, it's getting to that point that the men might turn on him. Maybe, he knew even long before that. You see that conversation he's having with Bjorn. I feel like maybe even then he was kind of sure. Yeah, the possibility is there. The men might turn on him. And, he even posed a question. How come you choose to follow me? And, this notion of picking your own master, and that master being worthy of being picked and followed. Yeah, it's being explored in that conversation as well. You see for Bjorn, yes, Askeladd is that person, right? That he does believe in, that he can follow, right? He said, I'm following you because I want to, right? Because clearly he thinks, he's the right man to follow. But he told Bjorn that he's the same, that he's also looking for the right type of person to follow, to have the right type of master. Though, of course, he kind of, also once again plays it off as a joke. And it's kind of a bit of a callback to that moment earlier in the series, right? Him legitimately asking Bjorn to lead the men, right? And that he would follow him, right? That was legitimate. I mean, if it wasn't clear then, it's clear now for sure, right? I mean, I thought it was certainly quite clear that he was being genuine about that. I mean, it was quite clear that Thor's had quite an impact on Askeladd, right? This is a unique individual, a rare individual that Askeladd was more than happy to follow if Thor's was open to it, right? Of course, Thor's turned it down. And in that sense, it feels like he's always kind of been on the lookout for this Arturios type figure to follow, right? Or someone that could be in the same mold, essentially, I think. Someone that is worthy of being followed. And he found that in Thor's, right? He found that rare individual, but of course, it wasn't meant to be. But going back to the fact that, Bjorn and Thorfinn are the two he can really kind of trust at this moment in time, it's for different reasons, right? Yes, he's able to trust Thorfinn, but, it's not because Thorfinn is loyal to him or anything. It's because he knows his motivations. Because he knows Thorfinn has one goal and one goal only, and that's to, keep getting these rematches until he can avenge his own father, right? That whole notion of, no one's gonna kill him but me, right? And even for Thorfinn, it's the only option, really, right? He has no interest in the political side of things and all of this stuff. He has no interest in these other men and their goals or, you know, their plans. As of this point, he doesn't like any of these people, right? He doesn't care about any of that. There's only one thing he cares about, and that's killing Askeladd or getting the chance to kill Askeladd. So it's kind of like a mutually beneficial thing at this point. But you see just how quickly the tables turned, right? You see that Askeladd and his men found themselves in the same position the people of the village found themselves in, right? I mean, at least for them, they know that Thorkel's men are coming. Thorkel and his men are coming. But you see that looming presence above the village. It's almost a carbon copy of that exact same scene of Askeladd and Ragnar overlooking the village, right? Now you have the same thing playing out. You have Thorkel and his men, right, looming above that village. But let's go to that scene, right? Askeladd's history lesson as he tortures the man, the English captain, right? This whole notion of the natives and the conquerors, right? And that whole cycle and that whole notion of, you know, who is justified to settle and cultivate those lands. And, you know, if the conquerors do end up becoming the natives, right, through conquest, I guess, should they not also expect something similar to happen to them at some point? Or should they not be understanding of the same thing happening to them at some point, right? But then, of course, there's always the notion of people not being responsible for the actions of their ancestors, right? You see that this man, he legitimately just believed that this barbarian, as he called him, is just, you know, telling lies at this point in time. Now, once again, you know, I'm not a history buff or anything, but perhaps maybe Askeladd was kind of cooking the books a bit about the Romans. I mean, ultimately, he hates all of them, right? He despises the Danes. You know, he hates the Anglo-Saxons. I mean, from Askeladd's perspective, all of them are equally invasive. And, you know, it really does feel like that Askeladd has these notions of setting things right, that he does kind of want to make a mark in history, right? And kind of restore some of that pride, essentially. But, you know, the tortured captain, the English captain, you know, he said, a befitting end awaits you, right? So, you know, I feel like this kind of foreshadowing's kind of been there for a few episodes now. You know, that they are going to have a dose of karma. They've certainly had their dose of karma, and it continues to pile on. So it kind of continues to allude that Askeladd and these men that have followed him and have done these really unforgivable things, perhaps, that they are going to get theirs. You know, that they are going to meet a befitting end. Yeah, you know, to me, it really does feel like they are going to get picked apart one by one, as I mentioned in my last discussion, or maybe the one before. It was really starting to feel like that. And now it's really, really going down that path, that they are going to dwindle in numbers. And then the one thing I do know, because of, you know, the inclusion of Prince Canute, is that they are going to get to King Swen, meaning, you know, the people that might accompany him there are also going to make it to that point at least, right? But again, it's not a given, right? I think, you know, the thing I'm kind of confident about is that Askeladd is going to make it there, right? He is going to take Prince Canute there himself. But I'm not 100% sure if Bjorn is going to make it. I'm just not sure. But of course, you know, given the fact that Thorfinn is the main character of this show, even though he is taking a backseat at the moment, and, you know, the focus is on Askeladd and his journey and his character arc, Thorfinn's going to make it there too. So that much I'm quite confident about. But, you know, let's see how things play out once they get there. But speaking of Prince Canute, I think these next few episodes are about to be really important in his growth, in this character arc of his. So let's see. I don't know if it's going to be the next one, because the next one is kind of set up as this action-packed episode, perhaps, or at least a good solid chunk of it. But yeah, you know, I'm really quite excited to see how things play out for Prince Canute from this point on, right? He certainly got an instant dose of reality, didn't he? Once that shield has been removed, he's out there now. He's out there in the open. I mean, yes, he's being protected, but, you know, there's some lessons to be learned here. And, you know, he's not going to be babied anymore, or he's not going to be shielded anymore, or sheltered anymore from these things. And I feel like, you know, Prince Canute might realize at some point down the line that, yes, you know, maybe it was important to kind of separate from Lord Ragnar. Now, of course, you know, him dying wasn't ideal, and that's not the type of separation Prince Canute probably wanted, but I think he is going to realize that maybe this was needed at one point, to not be sheltered from these types of things anymore, to not be babied, and to not be protected in that sense from everything that comes at him. And, you know, I'm already kind of thinking about a potential season 2 and the focus it could have on Prince Canute as well. Or, you know, some sort of focus on Prince Canute. I certainly hope so. You know, and I say season 2 because, of course, like I mentioned, as of this point, this certainly feels like Askeladd's story, right? He's in the spotlight, but I feel like beyond Askeladd, it is going to shift the focus back to Thorfinn, right? And hopefully Prince Canute has a part to play as well in season 2. I think that's about it for this one. I think this episode was probably the most noticeable in terms of a drop in quality, and I'm speaking of the animation and some of the consistency issues. You see the character models are a bit off, especially for Askeladd. There's a lot of CG being utilized here. I mean, it didn't make or break the episode or anything. I'm just saying it was kind of noticeable in this episode. But yeah, if you enjoyed that, consider dropping a like, consider dropping some comments, give me your thoughts. If you're into early access or full length, consider checking out the Patreon page. The link is in the description or the pinned comment. That's the one that's right at the top of the comment section. You cannot miss it. I assure you, you cannot miss it. So thank you for joining me and thank you for your time. And I do hope to see you again soon for the next one. Until then, take it easy.